What is Joshua's Law? A guide for parents to limit teen driver dangers. How might Joshua's Law assist keep your teen driver safe on the road in 2022 and beyond? For teenagers, obtaining a driver's license is a milestone. Protective parents may experience worry and sleepless nights during this trying time. The bad news is that fatal car accidents continue to be the leading cause of young death between the ages of 16 and 19. The good news is that despite numerous brand new and constant threats, a regulation was implemented in the state of Georgia in 2005 to assist in keeping juvenile drivers safer on the road. So what precisely is Joshua's Law? Here is a comprehensive 2022 guide for new teen drivers in Georgia and their worried parents. What is Joshua's Law and how can IT help reduce the dangers teen drivers face every day on the road? Teen drivers encounter hazardous conditions every day when they take to the road, but particularly in the first year. Sergeant Ben Finley, a driving instructor for the Johns Creek Police Department, claims that our children are not properly prepared to drive safely in Georgia. The biggest threat to teenagers is sitting in your driveway, despite the fact that you can teach your kids about firearms and cyber safety. I don't see why we will still be covering children with sheets in 2022. Who is Alan Brown? Alan Brown, who successfully pushed Joshua's Law through the Georgia legislature after his son died from fatal injuries sustained in a car accident, is another ardent supporter of teen driver safety. When asked to give one item of advice to parents of newly licensed teen drivers, Mr. Brown responded, "Keep in mind who is in authority. The parent, you. Pull the keys if you don't think your child is prepared." Sergeant Finley underlined that continued practice and parental monitoring are vital. Therefore, leading by example is crucial. That calls for parents to put their phones away, obey all posted speed limits, buckle up, and drive courteously. Everything you do in the automobile sets the tone for your young driver. The greatest risks that young drivers encounter on the road are listed below. Driver inexperience. Practice makes perfect in life, just like everything else. Everybody has occasionally made poor driving choices. The finest teacher of all, though, is experience, so we learn our lesson and modify our conduct. It's crucial to continue discussing safe driving practices, drive with your teen whenever possible, reward good behavior, and punish poor behavior with consequences because new drivers don't have this experience to draw upon. Driving instruction takes longer than a few months. It's a talent that needs to be developed gradually. Distracted driving. Teenagers who drive now face greater risks than ever. Any action that diverts attention from the task of driving is distracted driving. Cell phones and other devices can be fatal hazards, especially for novice teen drivers. Any type of distraction endangers the juvenile driver, their passengers, other motorists, and bystanders alike. Because texting needs a driver's visual, manual, and cognitive concentration, it is one of the most dangerous distractions in use today, according to the National Highway Traffic Safety Association, NHTSA. Teenagers who drive, as well as the great majority of adults, simply cannot multitask while operating a vehicle. Millions of drivers are distracted every hour of every day, which is incredibly dangerous. Sergeant Finley has witnessed horrendous crashes caused by distracted driving. He explained passionately, "It sticks with you and stays with you forever." Peer travelers. Another significant factor in auto accidents is having other people as passengers. When they are hauling 2 or more teenage passengers, young drivers are nearly 8 times more likely to be involved in a deadly collision. How does Joshua's Law benefit teen drivers and what is it? According to Georgia's Joshua's Law, a new driver between the ages of 16 and 18 is only permitted to take family members as passengers within the first 6 months after receiving their driver's license. A rookie driver is only allowed to transport 1 peer passenger during the second 6-month period. An adolescent driver in Georgia is only allowed to carry 3 other passengers after 1 year. You must abide by this legislation even if you believe your own youngster is mature enough to operate a vehicle. It is required that your child is aware of and obedient to the passenger rules. Speeding. Teenagers can have a heavy foot and a propensity for speed, especially guys. This is a terrible choice. State Farm claims that one of the main contributing factors in fatal collisions involving young people is speeding. When there are other passengers in the car and at night, inexperienced drivers are more inclined to speed. If your own child is a speeder, be sure to establish guidelines and penalties for receiving a ticket. For your intentions to be clear, you must follow through. Recently, a teen driver traveling with friends was stopped for hitting 128 miles per hour on GA 400. Think again if you believe your teen won't speed. Several teen driver monitoring applications let worried parents, like you, to view the speed at which their child is driving. Alcohol and drugs. Drugs and alcohol can also be lethal hazards for young drivers. Teenagers who admit to driving while intoxicated are 23%. Between Memorial Day and Labor Day, there are 100 deadliest days for teenagers. Young people find the summer to be thrilling, but it's also the most dangerous. Keep a tight eye on your new driver and be sure to constantly remind them of the risks associated with using drugs and alcohol, especially while driving. Stress and weariness. Teenagers today deal with stressors on a daily basis. When they're not doing tons of schoolwork, they're studying for big tests. Many also participate in groups or sports, which makes them busier than ever and frequently deprived of sleep. New drivers who are inexperienced and exhausted may forget their freshly learned safe driving practices when they get behind the wheel. Talk to your child about staying safe when traveling from point A to point B if you are worried that they are juggling too many responsibilities. Offer to drive if they are too worn out. Safer is preferable to sorry. Joshua's Law was passed to make sure that teenagers educate themselves and get experience before getting behind the wheel as new drivers. For all of these reasons and more, thousands of lives have already been saved by the law. Whose law is Joshua's? The loss of one father develops into a crusade. Joshua Robert Brown, a 17-year-old overachiever from Cartersville, Georgia, was a fan of both baseball and football. He got admitted into a prominent Boston music school because of his musical ability, and he intended to enroll there after finishing high school. Yet in 2003, Joshua's life came to an untimely end. On July 1st, while he was traveling in the rain on a 2-lane highway, his pickup struck a puddle of water, hydroplaned, and hit a tree. The teenager was critically hurt and fought for 9 days to live, but on July 9th he lost suddenly. Every parent's biggest dread is this. Joshua's parents struggled to put their life back together after experiencing unimaginable grief. The author of Joshua's Law sadly remarked, "I spent a year in a very, very dark place. I was in the worst situation a person could be in. Yet after hearing the voice of God in my sleep, Mr. Brown took the difficult choice to channel his sorrow, remorse, and emptiness into a personal campaign. He then proceeded to compose the entire statute that night and finished it in the very early hours of the morning. His state senator, who he delivered the measure to, praised it as the best piece of legislation he had ever seen." Alan and Lugina Brown established the Joshua Brown Foundation less than a year after the passing of their only child in order to give every youngster the chance to acquire life-saving driving skills. The organization campaigned to enact Joshua's Law in the state of Georgia and funded $250,000 to give Joshua's former high school driving simulators and training. It also created a cutting-edge program to teach driver instruction for every youngster. How did Joshua's Law pass and what is it? The Georgia House and Senate enacted Senate Bill 226, commonly referred to as Joshua's Law, in 2005 with an overwhelming 87% of the vote. The legislation was regarded as the most significant to pass in a long time. Joshua's Law's stricter teen driver regulations became effective on January 1, 2007. Since then, Mr. Brown has worked to enact 3 federal teen driving regulations as well as comparable legislation in 13 additional states. He has actively promoted teen driver safety by working with the Centers for Disease Control and the Academy of Science and Medicine. Also, he collaborated with the U.S. House to establish a law that mandates the installation of electronic stability control systems in all vehicles produced after 2011. This particular law saves around 15,000 lives per year. Joshua's Law's success. There is no doubting that Georgia's youth have been affected by Joshua's Law. Since the law's implementation in 2007, there have been 60% fewer fatalities involving teen drivers. Every year, 181 young lives are thus saved. What is Joshua's Law? Requirements for 16 and 17-year-olds. In 2021, Joshua's Law was amended by the Georgia legislature to include 17-year-olds as well. Joshua's Law used to just apply to 16-year-olds, but lawmakers realized they needed to broaden it to cover even more young drivers. For at least 1 year and 1 day, possess an instructional permit. Finish a 30-hour, Georgia Department of Driver Services approved, accredited driving school course. Make certain to finish at least 40 hours of supervised driving experience cumulatively, at least 6 of which must be at night. A minimum score of 75% is required to pass the driving skills test for applicants. There must be a parent or guardian present. What is the secret of Joshua's Law? Motivating pupils to study is essential for a dynamic driver's ed curriculum. Let's be honest. Driver's ed is not in their top 10 things to do list. Instructors and teachers must entertain teenagers while conveying their lesson clearly to their students in order to reach them. Teenagers who are comfortable and having fun are more inclined to study and turn into tiny sponges that soak up information, without even realizing it. That being said, some kids are always busy with travel sports teams or other activities. We always suggest an in-person classroom program, but in extreme instances, they are welcome to enroll in an online class. So choose carefully when enrolling your new adolescent driver in driver's education. Make your choice, take a moment to breathe, and participate in the procedure at every stage. Checklist of required documents for 16 and 17-year-olds. Valid 1 year and 1 day long learner's permit. Georgia DDS certificate of attendance notarized by the school, valid for 30 days, valid May to August during the summer. Certificate of completion of a 30-hour driver's education course at a driving school that has received state certification from ADAP. A driving experience affidavit must be submitted at the Department of Driver Services indicating the candidate has a minimum of 40 hours of driving, 6 of which must be at night. You don't need to bring the form with you because the parents will sign it at the DDS. Vehicle utilized for the road test must have current registration and insurance, not necessarily in the applicant's name. What is Joshua's Law? Requirements for 18-year-olds. First-time Class C license acquisition differs from upgrading your Class D to Class C license. The road test skills test must be passed by all 18-year-old applicants with a minimum score of 75%. The Class C license costs $20. Simply go to the DDS and ask them to replace your outdated Class D license with a brand new Class C license in order to upgrade your license from Class D to Class C. List of documents that every 18-year-old must have. The 1 year and 1 day rule is not applicable if you have a valid learner's permit. On the same day, the applicant may receive both a learner's permit and a Class D license. Vehicle utilized for the road test must have current registration and insurance, not necessarily in the applicant's name. Conditions of a Class D provisional driver's license. No driving at all between 5 a.m. and midnight. Only immediate family members, parents, step-parents, grandparents, siblings, kids, and anybody who resides in the same home, are permitted to travel in the automobile during the first 6 months of driving with a provisional license. Only one passenger in the automobile during the second 6 months of driving with a provisional license may be under the age of 21. Other passengers besides family members are permitted. Following the first 12 months, up to 3 unrelated minors under the age of 21 are allowed to ride along. An adolescent driver must not have any convictions for a serious traffic offense that results in a license suspension during the previous 12 months of holding a provisional license before applying for a full license.